Welcome back, everyone. We have a result already. Sam Shankland won his game against Parham Maghsoodloo and kindly agreed to join us in our studio to show us some key moments of his game. Congratulations, Sam.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
So started with the rouser, and I had noticed that Parham was mostly playing b5 in this position, which of course I was prepared for, but I somehow expected bishop e7 as well because
Let us do some arrows with the right click of the
I
mouse.
was sort of expecting bishop e7. I know he mostly plays b5 here, but I thought he was going to try to surprise me since I don't play e4 too often. And he seemed to, I saw him play bishop e7 once, so I sort of thought this might be coming, and Parham just got extremely unlucky because there's this guy, Demchenko I think his name is, who plays this line like every single game with black, literally every game. And I had a week to prepare for him in the Bundesliga because I knew he was their other team's board one, and then he didn't actually play, so I had like a week's worth of analysis on this line and was just waiting to unleash it on somebody, and it was unfortunate it was Parham because this was just preparation. Knight f3, b5, a3. a3 isn't a great move, but for a human to find the way to equalize is completely impossible. I believe the only equalizing continuation for black is queen a5, king b1, rook d8, only move. And then after queen e1 to now play rook back to b8. For a human, there's just no way. This is not going to happen, no matter how strong you are. The way he played is not so bad, actually. If I can just go back here to how the game went. b4 is not such a bad move. And now h6 is well timed. But here rook b8, all the way up to here, he was actually playing pretty well. And here knight fd5 is obligatory. And the line I came up with while preparing was takes, 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 takes. I wanted queen e3 check. And now it's actually funny. You can have this position with the pawn on h7 when knight e5 is very powerful, but here there's a very funny detail that after bishop f5, queen a7, bishop c2. With the pawn on h7, this is winning for white, but here king g8 wins for black because the king escapes, which is kind of a funny detail.
Yeah.
So unfortunately here I would have to acquiesce to getting a smaller advantage. I think after bishop d3, the computer claims black equalizes with only move h5, but I still think this position is very dangerous and very uncomfortable. And then after d5, knight e5, I think the game is already more or less over. I think the computer gave bishop c6 or something horrible, and then there's any number of good moves here. I think, if I recall, even knight a2 is just basically crushing here. I mean, so after he played rook b7, I knew I had to be winning and I had a lot of time, so I just had to find the way. And I think what I did made some sense. After bishop c4, I was expecting queen c7. With the idea to play bishop c8 and castle next. And I couldn't quite make the brute force work with like rook he1, castles up, bishop c8, f5, castle. I mean, white's probably better, but I couldn't. But during the game, obviously I would have had to rise, but my plan was to just take this guy. Because if bishop f6, I think that because my rook is defended on d1, unless I'm missing something after knight e4, he is just losing this pawn. And if that pawn goes, I think I should win very easily. So
the one on a6, yeah.
Yeah, and he could have taken with the pawn on f6, but I thought something like this was just lost for black. It looks completely crushing, at least.
Yeah.
So I thought that, and then I didn't even consider bishop b5, but it wasn't so hard to calculate this out to completion.
Right.
Here we are, e5 takes, knight takes, bishop b5, or rook b7, bishop c4, bishop b5. This wasn't so hard to calculate, I just had to make sure my knight doesn't get trapped, and it was pretty straightforward. I mean, at this point I'm just 2 pawns up, and unless there's something extremely direct, I'm going to get my knight out and then be 2 pawns up. So
Yeah.
it was very tough luck for Parham that he ran into a line that I literally had a week to prepare for, and I could actually task one of my helpers. Shout out to you. I won't say your name, but thank you very much for the help on this one.
Yeah.
It was very unfortunate for him that I had a week's worth of preparation on this line and had never gotten to play it before.
Yeah,
So
and
does it mean that it's a gap in Parham's repertoire with black?
I think he will fix it. And now, if you remember, queen a5, rook d8, rook b8, black is okay, but that's for a human extremely it's basically impossible for a human to do unless they know it in advance. But I certainly don't think I've busted this line or anything, and I don't plan on playing a3 ever again. It was a one-game try, and if you have a computer, you should be okay. But this was, for a one-game try, it was great. But Parham, I don't know. I know this is normally he is playing b5 instead of bishop e7 in this position, but I think he can continue playing bishop e7 as long as he just remembers what to do after a3. I don't know too much about white's other options in this position after knight f3, b5. I mean, I know there's other moves, like e5 is probably most principled, but I had prepared a3, so that's what I played.
Yeah, e5 is the principal move, with the main line being something like b4,
Yeah.
takes, queen
Right,
takes,
queen c3, gf6,
and
now
gf6,
make
and
sure
now, yeah.
not- this is very funny. I had a friend of mine who was like 2600 losing 12 moves to a low-rated player because of this bishop b4 trick. So that's not
Wow.
to be recommended, but instead you can,
After gf6, there are many moves. Bishop h4, knight d4, king b1,
yeah.
and many others probably.
I don't really know so much about this position.
And,
my sense is it looks a little uncomfortable for black.
Yeah,
I had come up with a3 like some months ago and just thought this was extremely
Yeah.
dangerous, and so I just played it.
yeah. And while computer likes this line for white, the one just mentioned with e5,
Yeah.
after g takes f6, computers, at least at low depth, tend to misevaluate this position and how dangerous it could be for white.
Yeah,
Blend-
I mean,
yeah.
endgames might just be completely lost, for example, so it's not without
Yeah.
risk, but
And yeah, and the most popular line, though not necessarily the most, let's say, objectively better for white, after
instead of a3.
instead of a3 is bishop
taking-
takes f6,
yeah.
yeah, and then after gf6, the move, let's say king b1, queen b6, f5. It could be played in either order.
Yeah.
Castles, takes, g3, king b8, and bishop h3. There have been some recent developments with a relatively rare move that became kind of trendy nowadays with knight a5, and many young players are following it and playing this line with black constantly, like the guy you mentioned earlier
Yeah.
that plays it every single game. This line is very trendy, but also at the same time quite uninvestigated in many different sidelines. And you proved today why it could be dangerous to follow the
Yeah.
trends without really hard work and many hours of
Yeah.
preparation.
You have to think for yourself, because computers don't show a3, but once you start analyzing it, it's like, for a human, it feels almost impossible to defend.
Yeah,
But,
and this brings me to a question that actually kind of emphasizes how much chess has changed recently, because I imagine a top grandmaster, or let's say just an average grandmaster from any country who has such preparation, could go on and play the same line for his entire life pretty much, and just surprise everyone over and over again, and maybe even with preparation black players would not find the best continuation. And nowadays, even though you probably spend some time together with the above mentioned helper, you played it, you memorized some variations, and now you admit to everyone that you're not intending to play it again.
No.
So how does it feel to work so hard on a line and then just like, okay, you have a
Well,
stamp on it, but
it helped that most of the work was not me, and it was
Oh, yeah.
delegated to my friends. But no, I mean, people are so strong these days, and it's impossible to prove advantages with white. You have to, take the chances you can get and then throw them away, because they're not going to work a second time. But if you work for, I don't know, a week, and that just guarantees you a victory at some point, that's a week well spent.
yeah,
I mean, it's.
it's true, it's true.
It's not like especially if you win very cleanly like this, it doesn't really affect you so much. But like, for example, if I could cite a game, I had a very nice novelty against Jeffrey Zhang in the US Championship, and then I misremembered a move order and went from like much better for white to completely lost with white in 10 moves. So I had spent like a really strong novelty that just, I think, busts the variation that he plays, or that he played, and he will have to change, and then still managed to lose the game in like 15 moves. So this one was absurdly painful, but
Yeah, I've
if
seen this game. King f2 was the line, yeah,
yeah,
and
and white
Scotch.
is much better, but I messed up my move order with a3 bishop
Yeah,
d3,
yeah,
and so
exactly.
instead of being much better, I was completely lost on like move 10 with white, which is not a good place to be.
Can we just show the position very quickly
Yeah,
so the
this
people
one
can
was
follow?
But like, yeah, I mean, this game, of course, if you win easily, it's not, it doesn't feel like you've wasted anything. But the game with Jeffrey, he had played this queen f6 move in the Scotch, which I don't think is so great. f3 check.
And s-
Oh no,
yeah.
sorry, this was knight f6.
Knight f6, yeah, a side line here,
f3, knight f6, bishop f4,
yeah.
bishop b4 check, and now this king f2 is extremely strong.
And now instead of bishop d3 or
No,
something,
bishop
or
b3 is correct.
yeah,
And here the point is e5 is coming.
Yeah.
and black is in massive trouble. And it's very important that he cannot play knight h5 very comfortably, because after bishop c7 he cannot trap my piece because his own bishop gets trapped.
Yeah.
So I had known that after bishop d3, the best move is knight e8, and then there follows a3, and this position is clearly better for white with the
Yeah.
extra space and good activity. And I remembered that much, and then messed up my move order and played a3 first. And the problem is now,
Suddenly
after
black
knight
is,
h5, I'm basically busted, because in this one I don't trap his bishop anymore.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, like, he's active, he's slamming through with f5 very quickly, my king's on f2, and I haven't like taken anything for it.
Yeah.
While the other position would have been much better for white. So it's it's really painful when like you mess up your preparation in a way that's, or well, if you use a good idea and then don't win the game, or even if you get something worse like a disaster like this.
Yeah.
But,
Especially if you analyze it at your own expense, like whether you spend time or a lot of resources on it.
Right.
And
but
yeah, and by the way, in that game you also managed to defend very tenaciously and get
yeah,
some
I mean,
chances.
I made it more complicated than it should have been, but it's at some point I could have equalized even with like 3 or 4 extremely precise moves in a very
Yeah.
difficult position with no time, and I
Yeah.
wasn't up to the task.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one here, I mean, I was obviously happy to win a game, and Parham is extremely strong, and so just to win a game with mostly just preparation is always nice.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting that you mentioned that a week of work is worth it if you manage to play it and win a game against a top level player.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I don't know. I mean, Parham is very strong. Like, I mean, I think realistically, if I had gotten this preparation, even against someone like really, really strong 2800, I still think I
Yeah.
might just cruise through the same way, because it's
Yeah.
so hard to play for black.
true. And so back to the original question about this kind of let's call it whether the time is well spent when you get to play it on your own. You usually focus on novelties and surprising your opponents, because you expect your top level opponents to know all the recent theory and the moves that have been played. And actually what most, let's call it, title players are doing nowadays, at least as far as I've seen, is copying guys like you. And now for the next maybe couple of months, we'll see a few games by grandmasters just trying to surprise with the same thing, just hoping they didn't see this game or this interview.
Okay.
And yeah, and just trying to memorize lines rather than invent something. So overall, it's a very good game, very nice preparation, and humble explanation of how things are going in the top level's mind. Dina, do you have a question about the game
Yeah,
or
it's
the prep?
been very surprising anyway by the speed of the
Analysis.
no, by the speed of the game,
Ah.
and quite sorry for black. So I suggest we move on to other games. Which,
you don't mind, of
if
course,
you don't mind,
That we pick your brain a little bit
share
longer.
with us your opinion on.
So this is board number 1 between Bogner and Corey.
Yeah, so,
So-
white, obviously white is slightly better here, but it's going to be very, very hard to do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, these positions, like, I've always found that black probably didn't want to get it into something this passive, but now that he's here, it's, if he just sits and doesn't do anything, it's very, very hard to break through.
Yeah.
While if he ever plays c5, he's often asking for trouble, but Bogner can put a fair amount of pressure here with basically no risk. You can just start playing h4 and asking black for moves. At some point, d5 might come. I don't know.
Yeah, h4 or d5 by white. Actually, like 3 of the 4 games that are played today seem to be very theoretical and better for white, at least according to my understanding,
Okay.
which is not that impressive. But let's just say that in this game, early on, we had the same game we're looking at, normal Catalan position, after which black played the rare move knight bd7, and then
Yeah.
they followed with the main line. And here after bishop b7, instead of, let's say, knight c3, or after this move, knight c3, rook c8, instead of e4, I didn't manage to mention it because our stream crashed several times, but I recall once looking at the line rook fd1, c5, and knight e1 for white.
This is similar to the Ding Liren against So game from the World Cup. It might even be the exact position.
And yeah, white should have some slight advantage here. And then if I could recall the moves correctly, then we reach some sort of an endgame like this, and bishop a8, and some further forcing moves. And Then I want to ask you, how do you evaluate this position, even though it's not exactly relevant to the game? I remember that if this is the right position, computer gives a slight advantage, very slight advantage for white. But from a human perspective, what do you think about it? Like after,
I think if white can keep the rooks on the board, he is completely winning, and if the rooks will trade, probably black will hold.
yeah, so something like this.
Position, it's not going to be fun. Like black's really going to suffer, but let me put it this way: I do not think I'm going to beat Magnus here.
Okay, and Magnus with white will probably beat anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like my chances of holding Magnus with black here more than beating him with white.
All right, that's an interesting evaluation. And here, okay, after the other main move, e4 and all the exchanges, we have what you mentioned earlier, which is probably slightly better for white, but tough to break through. Moving on to board number 4 between Georgiadis and Vidit, we have a Grunfeld. And let's, first of all, what do you think about this?
Well, in general, a Grunfeld, maybe this is just me, I play the Grunfeld sometimes, but I cannot evaluate Grunfeld positions very quickly just because they tend to be so concrete. Like, it's possible that black is just completely lost here, but it's also possible that he's totally fine. It depends a lot on the concrete dynamics.
Yeah.
Like, if he's going to suffocate against a center, like, he will just lose. But, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. Say queen d2. I mean, I think if white goes like h3, rook ac1, he probably just wins the game. But there's like lots of things black can try. He can play e6, d6, f6. He can, I don't know. He can.
Well, maybe we can judge based on the time on the clocks by both players. So here we have Georgiadis versus Vidit, and we see Vidit has an hour and 7 minutes. So
Okay.
he didn't spend too much time, but to my understanding, it does also seem quite
I mean,
better for white, despite being a Grunfeld player as well and not knowing much
for
without
example, rook c5
preparation.
I mean, it depends so much on the concrete details, like that.
Yeah.
It's hard to give a
Rook ED1 maybe, or
rook ed1, sure.
AD1, yeah, but
Yeah, okay, and now queen c8 maybe. It's
Rook AC1, something like that.
I don't know. It's
Just feels
you play
worse.
e6 here as well. And
Yeah.
if d6 take no, but now there is d takes e6 and e takes f7 check in between. No, but even then there's bishop f3, bishop e5. I mean, you just have
Yeah.
to calculate so much. You can't like evaluate it, nor you have to just
Yeah.
calculate and figure it out.
Let's have a look just from the start very quickly. The typical starting position of the Grunfeld. Nico played c takes d5, e4, and followed with the main move knight f3. And now he chose a rare side line with bishop b5 check, just like Anand did against Gelfand in their first world championship game.
Yeah.
And it's well known that knight c6 should equalize here, but Vidit chose a rare, not so common move, knight d7. And Nico seemed to have been quite well prepared against it. He just immediately blitzed the moves, castles and rook e1. And Vidit started thinking for quite a while, and maybe was not so well prepared, just wanting to avoid a draw or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe there was something in bishop b5 check he didn't like. I don't know. I mean, it's I've
Yeah.
never. I don't. I'm sure I've analyzed this at some point, but I don't remember anything from it. At
Yeah.
least not now.
So moving on to board number 3 between Leko and Abdusatorov, and we can see knight takes h4. So was played in the last position we've seen. So first of all, the opening, this typical position that Abdusatorov plays very often, even in this tournament. Bishop d2, bishop f6, and now Leko played the rare move rook e1. Have you seen it before, or just like can you make sense of it just by your intuition?
Well, you clearly, I mean, there's a few ideas. One could be if black plays d6, you're probably aiming for some of this business.
Yeah.
It's kind of tricky.
And defend
because-
e2.
Yes.
Okay.
That's probably part of it. So it's with the queen c2 being a strategic threat. Like after d6, if you have to, maybe you can take d2 here, but still knight g5.
Mm-hmm.
No, knight e4. Nah, probably not.
Yeah.
But
So this looks good for white. So rook
yeah,
e1,
basically, you're kind of forcing black to resolve the tension, and
knight takes d2.
yeah, and the rook is quite well placed there. For example, if black takes here and goes this, you can play something like bishop f1, and you're ready with knight d2 to play e4, and the rook turns out to be well placed. My guess is that's sort of what Peter had in mind. And then in this position, obviously not that much is going on, but it's pretty clear the rook is well placed on e1, supporting this e4 advance, and
Yeah.
I mean, at least in the position they have, or that I saw here on the final position, it looks like white is much better.
So we'll just show the moves very quickly. G6, and white play the most natural moves with rook AD1.
So here,
knight
like,
D7. Yeah.
there's all sorts of strategic ideas, but I guess with this rook FE1, Leko is more prepared for the position to be smashed open immediately.
Yeah.
Like
E5.
I mean, because for instance, if D5, I don't know what's going on. If takes, bishop F3 is probably good for black. Like this looks not good for white. Knight F3 is coming.
Yeah.
So my guess is Peter wanted to take this way, sort of highlighting that the rook on E1 is useful now. I don't know. We get something like this and say this looks.
Yeah,
very
you go to
uncomfortable
D7.
for
Yeah.
black. Queen E2, Queen D7 maybe.
Yeah.
And Queen comes to C6.
Yeah.
This should be pretty uncomfortable for black.
Yeah.
This is probably just good preparation by Peter. I don't know.
And after bishop G7, Queen F4, threatening D6, Queen E7, takes, Knight B5, and now E5 and Queen H4. And here after Queen takes H4, we thought that Knight H4 is possible. The people at home didn't see it because our stream crashed, but G takes H4 seems like a very interesting move to consider. And maybe you can show us through what comes to your mind.
I mean, it looks like Peter spent quite some time on this position, but in some cases, boring is prudent. And honestly, this position just looks so bad for black that I don't really feel a need to play GH4. I mean, white has such pleasant pressure in this endgame. I mean, unless GH4 wins like on the spot.
It threatens Knight takes E5, but probably after some lines, maybe we'll end up in some opposite colored bishops and black gets some
And the kingside pawns are
desirable
just so bad.
chances.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Peter made a very appropriate decision here. I mean, I would probably think more during a game, but this endgame looks almost lost for black to me. He's losing material on the spot, as far as I can tell, and it's not good.
Yeah, so far we have 4 theoretical battles that seem to have led to white advantage, and we have already the first game ending very quickly, and I don't think a player can ask for a better recovery from a tough game than what you just achieved now. And
obviously it was good timing. I mean, I played a very bad game yesterday, of course. I mean, it should be pretty obvious I made a lot of very poor decisions, and it's nice to come back with a win.
Yeah, and it's like sometimes when players lose a lot of games in a row, I've heard some trainers or just experienced players mentioning that it is good to make a draw and stop the bleeding or something like this. And in this case, you didn't even have to stop anything. You just immediately won without even making too many.
I don't go cry in the corner because I lost a game to a low-rated player. This was not this game with Abdi Saturov yesterday was not my first loss playing down. It will not be my last loss playing down. But if you let that crush you or derail you from fighting the same normal way, then you've lost again already. You need to just put it behind you and play the next game.
Yeah, that shows that you're not only professional at chess, but like at the game and the work involved in it, but you're also having a sportsman approach to the game. You're a real athlete, and this is something for everyone to take example from. So we are very happy to have you here and hear your opinion and preparation. Thanks for sharing all of it. And
thank you very much.
Sam Shankland, everybody, who just won against Parham Maghsoodloo with a very beautiful miniature. So congratulations, and we'll take a short break and get back to you soon with the games.